ever thought to yourself, how can I plant panicle hydrangeas and have the most color all summer? Well, stick with me and I'm going to tell you how. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and today we're going to take a look at the Panicle Hydrangea family. So panicle or paniculata, different ways of saying it. These are the hardy hydrangeas, some of the most reliable hydrangeas that you can plant in your garden. These bloom off of the new growth, so even if you trim them and are like, oops, was I supposed to not, these are very forgiving hydrangeas, because if you trim them in the fall or you trim them in the spring, it doesn't matter. They're going to bloom reliably for you that summer. So we're going to break it down starting in order of which they have started blooming in the greenhouse. And this is going to also kind of translate into your landscape, as far as the first ones I'm going to talk about are going to be the earliest in the season to bloom. And then as we go on, those are going to be the later bloomers. So the first one we're going to start off with is the Quickfire Fab hydrangea. Beautiful newer hydrangea with large full flowers, those typical big cone-shaped flowers. They have these large lime green flowers that turn white and then explode with beautiful magenta coloration. They get about 6 to 8 foot tall, so they're one of the more larger in the series, and also 6 to 8 foot wide. They're hardy in zones 3 to 8, as are all of these hydrangeas we're going to talk about. They like to be planted in full sun to part shade locations, so depending on where you live will kind of depend on if you should go more the part shade route if you're in the south, or the full sun route if you're here in the north. Next, we have the tiny Quickfire. So if you are someone that doesn't have a large space to plant these hydrangeas, tiny Quickfire is just a cute, compact little hydrangea variety. It has very strong stems, nice, big, full, lacy looking flowers. So these aren't going to be just a solid plant with full of petals. They're going to have more of that lacy look to it. And it starts off white and blooms into magenta as the flowers age. Next, we have the little Quickfire. And if you notice, Quickfire is kind of in a lot of these names. Quickfire was, it's been discontinued now, but it was one of the more original in the Proven Winner hydrangea series. And it was an early blooming variety with excellent bright color. I have it in my garden, so if you've watched any of my garden tours, you'll notice that that Quickfire is usually blooming somewhere around the 4th of July. So little Quickfire has lacy cone-shaped blooms. They start off white and they turn to pink. And another thing with this plant is it's got really great burgundy fall foliage. It only gets 3 to 5 foot tall and wide, so it's not a super large variety, but great for landscapes or even container gardens. Next on the list is a brand new one. This is the Hydrangea Pufferfish. Not only does it have a very fun name, it has super fun flowers as well. Pufferfish has very large white flowers. It's a very floriferous bloomer, so just loaded with flowers. It gets 3 to 5 foot tall, 3 to 5 foot wide. The flowers start off white and turn to a beautiful lime green. The name Pufferfish, if you kind of envision a fish in general, the name was because at the very tip of these flowers there's a little tuft, and it kind of resembles a spray of water. Mid-season bloomers, we'll start off this list with Hydrangea Bobo. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I love Hydrangea Bobo. We have it everywhere. I have it in my landscape at home, and I have it in the landscape here at the greenhouse. Bobo is known for very strong stems, great fall color, a little bit smaller habit than some of the big guys that get 6 and 8 foot tall. Bobo usually only gets about 3 to 4 foot tall and 3 to 4 foot wide. One thing I will point out with Bobo is the little florets on each of the blooms are a little bit smaller than some of the others in this series we're talking about today. So Bobo wouldn't be my first choice for a dried flower, although many of these we're talking about would make excellent dried flowers. Next, we have the Little Lime Punch hydrangea. Little Lime Punch is another new variety, and it's got bold colored blooms. It makes a great dried flower, and it starts off lime, kind of goes to white, and then that beautiful, just intense magenta coloration. The thing that's really neat with Little Lime Punch is on one plant you can have several colorations of flowers, just depending on where they're at in their bloom cycle. So if you've got some newer blooms, you'll have shades of white, and if you have the blooms that are towards the end of their bloom cycle, you're going to have that magenta. So it's just a beautiful trio of colors that can appear on one plant. Little Lime which is kind of a sister plant to Little Lime Punch. You may be wondering, what is the difference? Little Lime was introduced first. Little Lime Punch is kind of an improved habit of Little Lime. Little Lime starts off with lime flowers that turn white, and they turn more of a lighter pink, or let's call it a dusty rose coloration. Not quite as vibrant as the Little Lime Punch. We like to call this the Petite Limelight. It's about 3 to 5 foot tall and 3 to 5 foot wide. Firelight, if you've seen my garden tours at all, is another one that I talk a lot about in my garden. Firelight has huge flowers. They start off white, turn kind of rosy pink, and then just explode in a bright magenta color. It's almost too good to be true. This makes a great cut flower, has a ton of blooms on the plant, and gets about 4 to 6 foot tall and wide. Now, if you're looking to add those late summer bloomers to the garden, here is a list. We'll start with is the Firelight Tidbit. If you're like, Heidi, these hydrangeas you're talking about, they're just too big for my garden, this is the one for you. Firelight Tidbit is very compact in size, only gets about 2 to 3 foot tall, and although it's very cute and compact, it is an explosion of color. The flowers are a little bit smaller because this little plant can't hold these big 12-inch blooms, but they are gorgeous, and there is a ton of them. It's 2 to 3 foot tall, 2 to 3 foot wide, and is great for small spaces, or for those of you who container gardening is your option, this is a great container garden choice. Limelight Prime is a newer addition with those giant blooms, 6 to 12-inch long blooms. Can you imagine such huge flowers on a plant? It is absolutely stunning. It's more compact than Limelight, which is the original. It has super strong stems, and instead of the flowers kind of nodding over, they're big upright blooms. Glossy foliage, and the lime green lasts longer on the flower before it transitions to the pink than does Limelight. 4 to 6 foot tall, so more of a revised version, a little bit sized down of Limelight. Speaking so much of Limelight, we're going to end with Limelight. And Limelight is the original Panicle Hydrangea for proven winners. This is kind of that gold standard that when people are talking that big white cone-shaped hydrangea, they're thinking Limelight most of the time because that's the one that's been around for just forever. Limelight has huge 6 to 12-inch long blooms, so very, very big blooms. It starts off lime green, goes white, and then kind of a dusty pink. It can get over 8 foot tall, and if you've seen mine in my garden, it is a giant. But it can be trimmed back in the fall or in the spring and not worrying about having to sacrifice those blooms because it blooms on the new growth. Limelight, with its large flowers, makes an excellent cut flower. Can you imagine these big, huge blooms in a vase? It is a garden beauty. So if you're somebody who's just not sure about hydrangeas, you say, you know, they don't bloom for me or that kind of a thing, that is not true with these Panicle Hydrangeas. These are very reliable, blooming off of that new growth. I think that's key here because even if you trim them in the wrong season, there's really not a wrong season here with these hydrangeas. So if you want to dabble your feet in the water and give hydrangeas a try again, I welcome you to try any of these varieties that we talked about today. Earlier in the video, they start blooming earlier. Later in the video, they bloom later. So if you want to just kind of create splashes of hydrangea color in your garden from midsummer through the fall, here is a great list to choose from. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.